Happy New Year. Happy New Year. I wonder how you're feeling about 2025 and how you felt about 2024. Sorry for those on TikTok that I'm starting back over again because YouTube just joined me with sound. They didn't have any sound. For me, 2024 was a mixed year. I have to say there were some huge advances that were really wonderful that I was thankful for. There were some things that were hard that I wish had been different. That I'm hoping to attend in a new way. So we'll see if I can, because some of those things are kind of hard to address. So yeah, I think the biggest one is that I was saying is that I'm aging, and that part is hard to know that I'm approaching mid 60s and that I'm going to be 63 this year. And I was like, 63 is still young, but I've lost my sister. A friend of mine, I reached out to, one of my close friends from high school, and found out that her entire family of origin is now gone. Her sister's gone, both of her parents are gone. And it's just weird to get older and know that that's going to be a part that I'm facing, and that every year that I'm older, it's not like when you're in your 30s and 40s and you have health goals and physical goals, you know that you can accomplish them. Well, I'm battling aging. I'm battling the fact that my body is not going to cooperate, and that every year is going to just be harder to work against that. So, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give into it. That doesn't mean I'm going to like, whatever, I'm just going to stop. But yeah, so I'm hoping that by the end of 2025, physically I'm doing better and feeling better. But we're going to be talking about trauma bonds today. Oh, I'm reading some of you guys' comments that have just come in. You guys are saying that it's been a hard year for you. I think it was a hard year for a lot of us. There was really that there was. I think it was a year. One of the things that I've noticed standing back, and I've watched just the temperature of society. I've been on social media now since 2021. I know not very long, but it's been interesting to watch things from 2021 to now and seeing it go through. Because I actually was on since 2019 is when I started writing, but when I got on video was 2021, and I feel like the temperature out there has really gotten feverish. It's like a high pitch, that with a lot of frustration that with what's happening in our society as a whole, how we see each other. In some ways, become more of a global a community than ever. I now have relationships with people literally around the world. And so we've gotten smaller that way, but in other ways that emphasizes the problems. And I think one of the biggest problems is just the differences that we have around how oppression, it's really related to abuse, emotional abuse. So, in fact, somebody asked me this week, I got a comment about, it was not a nice comment. This person meant it as a dig, was trying to be insulting to me about, let's talk about why do you say there's psychological abuse and emotional abuse? It's just, they're the same thing. And I actually pushed back and said, no, they're not. I think there's a lot of emotional and psychological abuse that's occurring in the world. The psychological abuse has to do with how we see the world, how we think about it. It's a cognitive approach. It's perception of reality. And then emotional abuse has to do with how we feel. It's the validation and the sense of worth that we have around ourselves, whether or not we feel other people give us that sense of worth. So they are different things. And I think that we've become hyper aware because of our connectedness to each other, that there's a lot of disconnection. There's lots more oppression than we wish that there was. I think, even for example, if you stand back and look at the revelation that happened in the trial of France with the Giselle Pellicote's story, that there's a lot more darkness and exploitation happening into the shadows of things than we would like to admit. That it's terribly uncomfortable for us to. I think sometimes social media gives us the opportunity to get a mirror of ourselves as a society, and I think there's a lot more darkness and evil in our sense of selves, in the way we're willing to treat other people, and our difficulty in recognizing other people, as humans worthy of dignity. I think that we're seeing ourselves reflected, and it's really uncomfortable. So can we grow and change in 2025? Can we take what we know and learned from 2024 and do better in 2025? I'm hoping so. I tend to be an optimist. So I want us to do that. I want us to get better. So today we're going to be talking about trauma bonds. Thank you for that intro because it's just I know what today is, and the fact that you're here with me hanging out on a holiday and the start of the new year. Thank you for that. I just see that as a huge compliment and a real big privilege to sit with you today. But we're going to talk about trauma bonds. Why should we care about trauma bonds? Especially if you're out of a relationship, why does it matter? Shouldn't you like, yoo-hoo, I'm out of the trauma bond? But trauma bonds, in fact, I think it's so pivotal to understand how they get set up so that we can avoid them everywhere. We can avoid a false attachment with someone that is actually disingenuous, that maybe does not have our best interest does not have our best interest. And so that we also can recognize exploitation and manipulation, because really, if you sit back and think about it, a trauma bond in this is an effort to, if you kind of try to distill it down, the whole 7 stages of it, if you distill it down, it's a connection of another person for the psychological exploitation of that relationship to benefit the original person. And there's a lot of things that we do in life, in relationships, that's very exploitive. That's very, especially when it comes to persuasion. Really what trauma bond is, it's an elaborate persuasion. It's an effort for you to relinquish your rights, your sense of self, your dignity to benefit another person. And they're willing then to become a parasitic relationship so that you then become nothing more than a shell of your original self, and that other person gets fattened off your losses. So I think it's really terribly important for us to understand all of what happens in a trauma bond. And I had my mind blown. I put out a video on it 3 days ago, and I really want to hone in on it because a key piece, this comes out of an interview with Chase Hughes, who's a former U.S. Navy chief officer who now has dedicated his life to understanding behavior. He's a behavioral analyst. He trains, he's trained CIA agents, how to turn someone against their own country. He's looked at persuasiveness of cult leaders, very effective salesmen. Like how does salesmen be able to get into your house and convince you to buy nearly $100,000 solar panel that probably is a terribly exploitive situation that you may or may not need? How do they effectively do that? And in a way, they have set up an incredibly sophisticated degree of persuasiveness so that they can exploit you. And that's what happens in the beginning of a trauma bond. The trauma bond starts with the same effort, the same strategy of persuasion. And one of the key pieces that happens that I think that we've missed when we focus on love bombing is we always emphasize it's too good to be true. Okay, yeah, it probably was too good to be true because this person wasn't a real person. You met a reflection of yourself and you didn't know it. And all of us have this secret desire to meet our twin. We want to meet someone who's so similar to us that we feel this sense of understanding and being known and being accepted that we really can only find ideally with ourselves. And really, actually, the healing from a trauma bond, that's the healing from it. You want to heal from it, you need to then develop that with yourself, for yourself. That's the secret. By the way, if you'd like help with this, Lisa, Sonny, and I have a 12-week group coaching program. We just sold out January's, but we have February's, and we're now in January, so February is right behind. We've opened February's group up. So if you'd like to work with us to break your trauma bond, and it doesn't matter if you're in a relationship or you're out of a relationship, and it doesn't matter if it's with a partner, or maybe it's a family member, or maybe it's a friend, but if you'd like to be able to work with us, it's 12-week group coaching called Trauma Bond Recovery Group Coaching. It's in the link in my bio. So for those of you on TikTok, just click that link and it's right at the top. And for those of you who's on YouTube, I've actually put it in the show notes. So I'd love to work with you. This curriculum that Lisa's created, usually I was the one that created Healing Strong. By the way, we have Healing Strong also has opening. I created Healing Strong, and it's and fabulous. I love it. We do really, people really appreciate it. I looked at this curriculum that Lisa created, and it's freaking amazing. I am so excited. We launch our first group next week. And also, Healing Strong launches next week and still has a few openings. But this new group is going to be opening in February. So check it out if that's something interesting. But what happens in the love bombing, which is the first stage of a trauma bond, is a massive effort to persuade you. And we've focused on, the key things that we mostly focused on has been, it's too good to be true because there's too much idealization. It's not actually real. The second thing we focus on, and we've told you about, but I'm going to tell you something new, guys. I'm going to tell you something you've never heard before. The second thing we always tell you is this person tests you, they're grooming you. We also tell you that they're going to future fake you and try to paint a picture so that you can see yourself in the future with them. And they've also over-identified with your past, which is not actually real. And they make you feel super special about today because they're saying that they share all these things with you that they actually don't. So they create this sense of history with you that you feel like, oh my goodness, I've met this person who understands me in a way that no one ever understands me. And we have all this shared commonality and we're going to paint a life together, and you kind of visualize that. So they've created this unique universe with you. So that's the first thing, is that they do that. But here's the other kicker that I heard in Chase Hughes' interview on Diary of CEO. And when I heard it, my mind was blown. And like I said, it comes out of his work with how to turn people against their own country. It comes out of his work with, he's been around cult leaders and saw how effective they were, how they pull people in and groom people to get into those cults. He's also seen it with a salesman, very effective salesman. And so this is what it is. It's weaponized cognitive dissonance. Okay, you've heard us talk about cognitive dissonance. It's what happens in the center of these relationships. That's in the middle of the trauma bond, that when you start to feel like, I don't know what's real. Is it the person that I thought I met, that I really fell in love with? Or is it the person that I'm living with who is a terrible person? You know, maybe the person I'm living with is just having a bad day, or they're hungry, or work's going bad for them. You know, what's real? I don't know what's real. And you can't make a decision, so you can't figure out if you know the person or don't know them. You can't figure out whether or not this is a good relationship or not a good relationship. And then when you're in it long enough, you start to think, well, what's wrong with me? Because I can't seem to make a decision. So that's what we talk about as cognitive dissonance in the relationship. But Chase Hughes says, and he's right, I bet you 100%, guys, this is what happened to you. The person you met was exploitative enough that they got you to agree to something, a universal agreement, and they got you at war with yourself, so that you then complied with things that you normally wouldn't do because it put you in a bind. I'm going to give you an example of what I mean. So what he describes is called the PCP model. It stands for perception, context, and permission. They got to change your perception about yourself by having you make an agreement, so that you then, it changed the context to which you saw yourself, and then it changed the degree of your permissions. You know how so many of us have heard in the love bombing stage, well, if you just hadn't had sex so fast, then you would have never gotten into that relationship. Or they say, well, if you hadn't moved so fast with this person, or if you hadn't really fallen in love with this person, or, it's on you. You did something wrong. You gave up a boundary with this individual, and that's why you got into trouble with this toxic person. Okay, but you know why that happened? I'm going to tell you why that happened. It actually was something that they used against you that put you in an internal war with yourself that you couldn't get out of, so you complied to fix the war. This is how it works. They set up some agreements with you that you universally agree with. How it happened in my relationship is I met my ex. He knew I was a widow. He knew that I had been in a long-term relationship. So I had done all this hard work. He knew that. He knew I'd really raised kids, and that I had been worked at home and at work, and that life probably was really hard for me. And he said to me, isn't it time for someone to take care of you now? Okay. Now, if someone said that to you, there's nothing that I wouldn't agree about that. Yeah, don't we all think it's time now for someone to take care of us? Isn't that a lovely idea? Who does not want to hear that? So I then said, see, he said a universal question that I then agreed to. It happens like this. This is what they did in a study with, they did like a study around like drunk driving. They said, they went around to doors and said to people, don't you think that we should promote safety on the roads? Isn't that an important concept to have safety on the roads? Do you mind answering an anonymous survey about safety on the roads? Now, most people would think, yeah, who does not want more safety on the road? Who doesn't want to keep drunk drivers off the road? Everybody wants that. That's a universal statement. So when you agree to it, you've now stepped into a trap. And the trap was, first of all, you agreed to do an anonymous survey. So you're now complying with something that you probably didn't really want to, you didn't really have the time to, but you can't disagree with the concept of universally, safety on the road is a good thing. So they get you into by presenting it that way. Now, it may have been different for each one of us. Maybe some of us, we got asked, it might have came as a neg. It may have been a slight negative thing. Here's another way that they often do it. And this is something Gavin DeBecker talks about in his book, Fear, The Gift of Fear. They'll say something like, you don't want to be one of those stubborn people, do you? Or you're not a person who likes drama, do you? And so they'll make some statement again that's pretty universal that will all say, no, I don't like that. I don't like just people who stir up problems and crisis, who makes everything hard. Or no, I don't want to be a person who's just difficult to get along with. So they say something that you can't say no to because it's so naturally appealing. But what they've done is, the minute you do that, they've set a frame. They set a context. See, remember, perception, context. So by changing your perception, which is to get you to agree to an idea, they've set the idea, then they've changed the context. The context now is, if you then don't comply, you're not agreeing with your original statement. So if I said, for example, this actually happened, he started to take all the belongings down to the beach. If you read my story, Love You More, I talk about that. We have our first dates on the beach. By the way, I always feel the need to tell people I didn't wear a swimsuit that day. I wore shorts and a top. We weren't swimming. We were just having a date on a beach. I don't know why. I always feel like I need to tell people, it's like, it was not like what you think. It was a nice sight. I didn't want him at my house. He flew in from out of town, and I wanted some place that we could just hang out for a long period of time. And that sounded like a perfect way to do it. So we were at the beach. He then says, isn't it time for someone to take care of you now? And I said, yeah, I love that idea. I'm in my 50s and my kids are grown. I've worked really hard. I've worked part-time and worked full-time at home. My husband just died of cancer, and that was exhausting. Yeah, I would love to have someone take care of me. I'd love to have someone help out. That's what I was thinking. I'd love to have someone help out. So then he starts to take all this stuff, and he doesn't let me carry anything down to the bottom of the beach. And he's actually overloaded, like literally ridiculously hunched. It's heavy. It's silly looking. And I start to try to take something from him, and he literally swings it away from me and says, "No, I said it's time for me to take someone to take care of you. I got it." So there was the test. He then set up a test to where it showed that would I go along or would I push? Well, because he already set the frame of wanting to do something nice for me, and didn't I want something nice for me, I went along. And that showed him then I was compliant, that I was going to be somebody who then submitted to his control. So, for example, you may have heard, I really don't like drama. I just think people should get along. Don't you think that reasonable people should be able to talk everything through? See, there's the perception change that gets you to comply to the idea of, I want to be a reasonable person. I want to be a person that's easy to get along. And then when you bring up a topic, like something happens and you said, I really don't want to eat here, or I'd really prefer to see a different movie. Oh, now you're being difficult. I thought you said that you're a person who wants to get along, that you think things can be worked out. Now you're starting to become difficult. And you're like, am I? Maybe. Am I being difficult? I don't know that I'm being difficult. Maybe. Well, I did agree to that. I did agree that I would be easy to get along with. And now I'm not being easy to get along with. See, there's the internal war that you're at with yourself. Like I did. When I watched him carrying all that stuff down to the beach, I thought, well, I did say I want someone to help take care of me. And now I'm saying I'm trying to take stuff away from him, and he's just trying to help me. So maybe I should just back up and back off and let him do that. Not realizing that because I agreed to the change of perception, that this isn't about two adults coming together with shared boundaries. This is me allowing him to take care of me. You see the difference? The reality was we were two adults, and I wanted him to kind of try to get along, for us to both cooperate and work together in a collaborative way. But he said it as, I'm now not complying and allowing him to take care of me. And it could be that you agreed that you weren't going to be a conflictual person when you're just expressing your opinion, and everybody should be able to express an opinion. But this person, whether a woman or a man, has changed it to a different thing. Like, so for men, it might be, she says to you, I really hope to have a strong man who watches out for me. See, then you like, well, why would I not want to do that? That sounds like a masculine thing to do. I want to be the kind of man that does that. And then she says, well, why did you not show up? You said you wanted to be a strong, helpful man. You said you're going to watch out for me. And you're like, I did say that. I did agree to that. And now she's saying that my failure to show up for whatever reason it was is a violation of that. And now you're at war with yourself. When they do this, they then get you to then comply. And this internal war forces you to have to resolve the internal stir up, the internal tension. And then that leads you to give in, and you give up. You give in. And then that's how people convince people to buy $95,000 solar panels. That's how people convince people to get into cults. That's how people convince people to do all sorts of horrible things, is they do this setup. Now, it also happens in post-separation abuse. For those of you who are in legal battles, this is how it shows up there, because that's another stage where it really shows up a lot. And that is, don't you want what's best for the kids? See right there, perception change. That person saying, this fight between you and I is not about the fact that you and I collapsed as a couple. It's not about the fact that I'm being a terrible person to you and want wrong things from you. It's that it's about the kids. We're doing it about the kids. And so now if you don't change, if you then don't go along, then you're not a person who wants to take care of the kids. You're the bad person who doesn't think of the kids. Isn't your mind blown? This is what the thing was that we miss. Why these relationships work. Why we got into it and we couldn't pull out. Why we felt spellbound by it, like literally mesmerized and spellbound, is because they have put us at war with our own internal integrity, our internal moral compass. And the minute that we comply to this, then we're in a bind. And because basically what you'd have to say to somebody is, no, I don't want to be a good person. No, I don't care about the kids. No, I'm not a person who's going to easy to get along with. Well, who's going to say that? Who's going to say that at all? We're not. We want all that to be true about ourselves. So this is what I'm going to give you the trick of how to get out of it. It's going to feel very strange, but here's how to spot this. When someone asks you one of these questions, it's a universal question that feels really good and that you can't disagree with, recognize that as a setup for weaponized cognitive dissonance. Recognize that as the start of the PCP model. Perception, context, permission. The minute you comply, you've lost. You've lost. It's done. They've got you. What you have to do to get out of it is to say, that question sounds awfully obvious and everybody would say yes to that. Or, I think you're setting me up. This feels very manipulative. That sounds like gaslighting. I think you're trying to gaslight me. I think if you can call it out, call the pattern out, you can then avoid the trap. Somebody started to do that with me, and I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know about this concept, but somebody was trying to say something about me that would have caused me to make a natural rebuttal. I just disagreed with it. It was wrong, and it was really hurtful. And I said to them, that sounds like gaslighting. And the person said, oh, no, 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 I don't mean to be gaslighting you. And literally the whole thing fell apart. So if I step back and if I could have talked to my old self when on that first date and he said, isn't it time for someone to take care of you? And I said, well, actually, we're all adults and we have to take care of ourselves, don't we? So then I would have just bystepped the whole thing. Or if he said, I think people should get along and if we could just talk everything through, we shouldn't have conflicts like that. And I say, that's an awfully beautiful wish, but I don't think it's very realistic. So you bypassed it. You didn't necessarily agree with her. Or don't you think we should do this? Aren't you invested in the kids, the health of the kids? This is a post-separation abuse, the separation of the, don't you think that we should do things to try to, in the benefit of the kids? And you say, of course, we always are invested in that. And no, actually, I'm wrong. That's not the thing to say to that. I would say, that's a great concept, but I think that's a slippery slope and easily can become a trap. I think that's the way that we get out of that is to say, that's a slippery slope and that's an easy way to make this a trap. We're talking about you and I getting along. We're not actually talking about the kids. We're talking about splitting our assets. We're talking about you stalking me. We're talking about whatever it is this person's doing. We're not actually addressing a two-parent family here. So if you can identify the fact that it is a setup and call out the setup, you can bystep it and then not get into it. Because the minute we agree, then we go at war with ourselves and then we most likely will go along with whatever it is, we'll go along. So what do you think of that? And what part of it doesn't make sense? Because I think this is super important. I really want us to get better because here's the thing that just drives me nuts as a psychologist. It drives me nuts as a content creator. It drives me nuts about all of us trying to heal. And that is people come for us for being a victim. They're like, it's your fault. It's on you this happened. And if you'd just been wiser, if you'd set better boundaries, if you'd not slept with them so fast, if you'd whatever, it's always our fault for not seeing it. What they don't realize, this person has used cult level grooming on you. Cult level grooming that's how spies get people to turn against their own countries that they most often may love or support. Can think about that. Think about the implications that you met somebody who's as good enough that they know covert operation strategies and tactics that got used against you to cause you to give in and do this, which even that idea, I'm thinking about 2025 and where we're going to go as a world, I think it's awful that there is that many people who are that devious and exploitative that they're willing to weaponize our own internal moral compass against us. I think it's horrible. It's really awful. But yeah, it's not our fault for falling for it because we didn't know. We didn't really know what was happening. We assumed that this conversation was what it was. We assumed we met a nice person who was sincerely interested in us and trying to get to know us. We didn't know that we'd met somebody who was setting psychological traps up that was going to cause us to end up being, hurt and harmed. Oh, Lynn, I'm so glad that you're here. Yeah, it is. Isn't it fascinating? Lynn, by the way, if you guys haven't followed her, she's on TikTok right now, YouTube, so you know who I'm talking to. But Lynn Strathy, the Echo Chamber, she's also on YouTube and Instagram, and she's also on TikTok. And it is fascinating how these covert strategies get implemented that causes us to get trapped, and we don't even know. We don't even know that the setup has happened. We don't know that. It's very toxic, very scary. So that's stage one of the trauma bond. The trauma bond is love bombing. It sets up and causes the way in which you get stuck and that you buy into a certain reality with this person. You think that you've met a real person. You think there's a sincere effort for there really to have a relationship. You think that you two are going to, there's this understanding. You feel like you've met somebody who's super amazing. You feel like you've always known this person because they create a false sense of time with you. And it's so captivating, and it sets the stage for the rest of the stages. So the rest of the stage is really quick because I want to take your questions because this is really important, is that they build trust. This is how they build trust and dependency. You start to believe this person is really who they are. I said in the beginning of that relationship, and I was in therapy the entire time I was in that relationship. So it's not like I wasn't doing hard work. I was in therapy. And I remember myself clearly looking at my therapist dead in the eyes and saying, I've never met somebody safer. I've never met somebody safer. Jeez, I couldn't have been more wrong. I have never met somebody more dangerous than that person. So then what happens, the stage 3 is the criticism and devaluation starts to happen. It always starts to happen subtly, guys. It's not actually, they don't take you on in a harsh way. They take you on in your best interest. Like, don't you think your hair would look better if you put it up? Or don't you think your hair would look better if you wore it down? I don't know if you guys follow Daniela Massanek Young, she's called the cult knitting lady. She talks about how they always talk about our appearance and our hair, and there's like our body type. They have these set things that they love to like pick on, and so they'll say something that sounds like, look, it's a criticism, but it sounds like it's a way to make you better. Like, I think you'd look better if you wore more blue or something like that. And at first you end up thinking, oh, they just want me to look my best. What you don't realize is that it's actually the beginning of the devaluation that's already started. Then there's manipulation and gaslighting, where you don't even start to know what actually is real and what's going on. It gets so bad that you start to resign and give in. Then you start to feel like you don't even know yourself anymore. You're losing your sense of identity. And then finally, you fall into a sense of deep depression. A lot of us start to wonder if it's worth living. We start to wonder if there's any hope. We start to give in. We feel like we can't get out. And then we start the whole cycle again because we start to check out. They sense it, and they introduce enough love bombing to get us back at the start of the cycle, to start the cycle all over again. Okay, so I did this really quick because I want to spend the last 20 so minutes talking to you about it, because I think this is what is so important, that I want us to talk a lot about the beginning of this love, the beginning of a trauma bond, because that's the glue. That's how they get you in and get you stuck. So what kind of questions do you have about this? I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see all your comments better. What kind of questions are you having about this? So is it deliberate? Yes, I think it partly is deliberate, Louise. I think another part of it is not deliberate. I think, okay, so narcissist and toxic people, cluster B people. Yeah, Selah, I hope you stick around. I want to talk to your question. I see your comment here on YouTube, and I want to get back to it. So hang with me. I'm going to first talk to Louise. But Louise, I think people who have a cluster B personality type have had deficits in their personality. There's some things that are just essentially missing. There's a lack of empathy, there's difficulty self-reflection, there's excessive mentation. These things are hardwired deficits in the person's personality. And because of their hardwiring, it means then they sort of view the world very differently. So from the get-go, they view the world differently, and they've had a lot of practice with that worldview. That worldview is competitive, not cooperative. They really have this idea that it's an us versus them. Really, actually, it's a me versus them mentality. And because of this mentality, they've had a chance to they've learned not to ask for what they need. They've learned not to be vulnerable in the relationships. Instead, they've learned to exploit and manipulate to get what they need. And because of that process, they honed it to get really good. They've learned, think of it, if it's about survival. I mean, if you're, I don't, in a way, this sort of sounds insulting, but I think this is really the best way to sort of view it. If, for example, you're a predator and you've learned the only way to get what you want is to sort of use your prey's weaknesses against them, the way they view the world against them, and it works, you're going to get more likely to do it over and over and over. Now, you may not consciously know that's what you're doing in order to get what you want, but it works. And because it works, you're going to keep doing it. And the more you do it, the more it becomes instinctual and habitual. So sometimes it's conscious. I think in this sense of my ex, some of the things he did was consciously done. I mean, he kept cliff notes on women, so obviously he knew he was lying, and he was juggling a lot of relationships at the same time. That's part of the consciousness. Now, did he know that this set of agreements worked with me, that he was getting me to change my perception of myself so that then I would get along? I don't think he was that aware of it that way, but I also think he knew it worked because he'd done it before. He knew that when he would put it out there do you think everybody who puts on their profile, because online dating profile, one of the most toxic things you can write is no drama. It really is. You're essentially saying that you're stipulating what you want out of a relationship, and you're creating the ground rules before you even met a person. The ground rules is no drama. And the minute you've done that, now anybody who then clicks on your profile and says, "Yes, I agree, no drama," they've already changed their perception of I'm a person who's not dramatic. And you've already given enormous amount of control to the other person. Really two healthy relationships is this. It's two people that come together that so support each other's autonomy and individuality and differences that they know how to work out with each other, and they respect the differences between each other. They respect the needs and the desires and the difficulties and everything that's complex about that other person. They allow the other person to show up fully themselves. They don't need to establish boundaries and rules and ultimatums right at the get-go. They know themselves so well to know that if it starts to feel unsafe and there is too much drama, they're just going to back out of the relationship. They don't need to say to the other person, "No drama." They can just know, "Hey, if it gets too much, I don't have to stick around because I don't want to." That's the difference between healthy and unhealthy. So when you see someone who says no drama, I know I've met an unhealthy person who doesn't know how to negotiate with the world except to set boundaries with other people outside of themselves and not within themselves. They don't have internal boundaries. So that I know then that's not a safe person. So I hope that makes sense. It's a yes and no is the answer to that question. Selah, I'm going to jump back to you because Selah is talking about she's in a relationship with somebody. He's been diagnosed, I'm going to assume it's a man, been diagnosed as a narcissist. And he admitted to her yesterday that he knew all along what he was doing to her. And now she's even more devastated because she thought all the abuse had been done cluelessly, not purposefully. And then she added, "Please don't tell me to leave because I have no money. I have no opportunity I'm disabled and I don't have the ability to do something different." Selah, I want you first to know that leaving is a privilege. And not all of us get that privilege. And I feel teary saying that. I'm really sorry you're in a position of lacking the privilege to be able to get out. But I do think there are things that you can do for your own salvation that will really, really help. If you have to survive this relationship, I think there's things that you can do to make you survive it more tolerably instead of so vulnerably. So what am I suggesting? I think first of all, you have to emotionally detach and see yourself as no longer, you're going to emotionally divorce yourself from this person. This person is going to cease to have the same importance and value to you. You're not going to prioritize their approval. You're not going to prioritize their opinion. You're not also, it means, and this is the harder part, you're also going to then cease to care about what they think about you and the way in which they want to try to control you. That you're going to become a person who just sort of blows off everything. You're going to blow off their criticism. You're going to recognize a lot of it's gaslighting. You're going to recognize a lot of it's just difficulty. This person's being antagonistic and hostile. You're just going to start to say, you know what, they're not easy, and I'm going to psychologically become a roommate with this individual. Now, I want to warn you, if you get really good at this, you've essentially, in a lot of ways, killed the relationship and then you've stopped their supply, and they may leave you for it. So I want to warn you that it may drive your partner out because they like the drama. As much as people say they don't want conflict and drama, antagonistic people thrive on it because they need novelty. These are individuals who are essentially very bored with life and very bored with themselves, and they have they need this rush of adrenaline. They like stirring crap up. They like stuff to be rough, and because of that, they don't plan. They don't see the future. They can't learn from mistakes. They're highly impulsive. And as a result, when you stop being a lot of fun and stop creating drama in their life by responding to them, they tend to get bored and they like to leave. So I want to warn you, you may get left as a result of that, but your salvation is for you to start to build up inside of yourself your own value. You start to take care of yourself, prioritize yourself, start to figure out what it is that you want to wear, what you want to eat, what you're going to do with your time, start to meet new people, start to develop some hobbies. You build a life for yourself. Build a life outside of this person for yourself. That's how to survive a relationship that you can't leave. You can't leave. I'm so sorry that you're in this position, and I'm really glad that you reached out and you said something to me today. Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Meryl. I appreciate that the support you guys are giving her because it does sometimes. I mean, Meryl said it took her 10 years to get out. Somebody else told me the same, that they had worked and saved and quietly tried to get their life in a position for them to be able to leave, and it took them a long, like years and years and years to get out. It took me a year. I had to strategize heavily how I was going to, like, I wanted what he took from me back. He took half of the company, which I gave him. I didn't know I gave him. So I really had to like strategize how I was going to do that. And I prayed a lot. You guys, I'm a believer, and I prayed a lot for help and for supernatural intervention. And fortunately, because I knew he was impulsive, I knew he'd like get himself into trouble, and I knew I'd have leverage at that point. So I'm really glad, Selah, you just said you've been doing everything that I just said. So I'm thrilled that you're doing it, because I think that's the way to get out. That's the way to do this, is that you have to start focusing on yourself. Back to the trauma bond recovery group coaching. That's what we're going to help you guys do. If you join for the 12-week group coaching that starts in February, we're going to be talking about how to like mentally break that connection, that obsession, that mesmerized, spellbound connection you have with the person, and help you then to connect with yourself in a more healthy, whole way, so that you de-center, because that's what they want. They want you to center them. So you de-center them so that you can begin to like find yourself and rebuild a connection with yourself. So if you'd like help with that, consider joining the February Trauma Bond Recovery Group Coaching Program. Also, I really want to talk to you about the Healing Strong. We have several spots left for Healing Strong. It starts next week on Thursday, meets every Thursday. Well, not every, because we have a few weeks we have to take off, but it meets weekly on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's an hour and 15 minutes long, and it helps you with all the things that you feel as an aftermath. Like, how do you stop the rumination? How do you get over the guilt? How do you find closure when they're never going to give you closure? So there's so much that we struggle with, that after we get out of these relationships, we don't naturally heal. We do think that we would, but we really actually struggle. The name of the one that starts in Healing Strong is for helping you heal from the aftermath of the relationship. Trauma Bond Recovery Group Coaching is for the one to help you break the trauma bond, to break the connection. And you don't have to be in the relationship. We still stay connected in our heads to these people. I had a trauma bond for a year at least after I got out of that relationship. I'll tell you, I think the thing that really tripped me up the most for me was two things. One was shame. I felt so much shame for falling for this person. I should have known better. That's what I thought. That's what I told myself. I'm a psychologist. So it really, for me, was devastating to feel like I was that vulnerable. So that was really, really painful. I think the other thing was the lack of closure. I wanted the answers. And in fact, he actually said, I think we should meet because I want to give you some closure. Like, I loved it. You know what I'm saying? I wanted, we met and closure never came up. He wanted to meet and wanted to ask me for more out of me, more money out of me. So don't fall for that they'll offer you whatever you want. And what it is it's just a bid. It's like they're fishing, guys. That's the bait on the end of the hook. And the minute they get you into that meeting or that call or that text message or whatever it is that they're promising you, they've now they're going to hit you back with whatever it is that they want. It's never going to be what you need. It's going to be what they want. So you have to find closure for yourself. I had to find a way to give myself closure. That's the stuff that we work on in Healing Strong group coaching. So yeah, Amanda, it is really cool that the thing that came out of that relationship was your faith in God. Yeah, that is amazing that it did help bring you back and really strengthen that. So Research Tube said everything I've ever owned or loved was destroyed, and they bragged to me about it. And then they smeared me on abuse forums, and they went all out and told me my existence was a problem. Jeez, that's awful. Wow. And so, yeah, in Research Tube said the rumination explosion with flashbacks is hell. I can barely communicate or leave when... and I teach in that Healing Strong. There was 1 week that I give you a technique that, guys, I swear by it. I have seen people do, it's miraculous. I teach you this cognitive technique that I created and I've used with patients over the years, and I've seen it transform people. and it's transformed me. It's what I did. You probably wouldn't know. I'm naturally a highly anxious person. I know, it's like, really? You don't look like I'm anxious. No, because it works. This technique works. And I'm not, these days, yeah, I get nervous, but I'm not like I was. I mean, if you met me in college, jeez, I used to have panic attacks. It was terrible. I would say I used to struggle. My condition that I had when I was younger was generalized anxiety disorder. I was perpetually stirred up and shook up all the time. So it really has changed my life and given me control back. And I'm going to teach that to you in about, I think it's week 5 of Healing Strong. We get into that. Yeah, Tracy Simmons, it's also how to get over narcissist parents, not only just a partner, it's also a narcissistic parent or a narcissistic friend. I mean, all sorts of different types of relationships we can have that are really, really harmful in our lives. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking for other comments you guys have made because I want to take your questions. What kind of questions do you have about a trauma bond that you might, or even just healing about narcissistic abuse that maybe I could help you with? Yeah, Christina's talking about being treated as a scapegoat. Here's some thoughts about scapegoating. Scapegoating is really tough. I've been scapegoated several times. I was a scapegoat in my family. I alternated in my family between the parentified child and the scapegoat. I think probably because my neurodivergence, I'm autistic, for those of you who don't know. Neurodivergent people, just to kind of blurt the truth out because we're blunt and we don't always have great social skills as a result of that. So we tend to say things we shouldn't say. I used to say I suffered from mouth and foot disease, that I stuck my foot in my mouth often way too much and got it way too far down before I realized I'd done it. It really got me into trouble when I was younger, that I just would see something and say it. So I got scapegoated a lot. If you're a scapegoat, I've got a few very hard pieces of advice for you. As one who's been there for years and really understands what it feels like to be in that role. You're the most You have the least power. You have the complete least power. Unless you have an ally in your system, whether it's your family or work or whatever the scapegoating situation is happening, and unless you have an ally who's very powerful in that system, you are in trouble. Because you have no power to change it. You can complain, you can resist, you can do whatever you want, but the more you struggle, it's like quicksand. It drowns you. It will take you down. So your only solution in a scapegoating situation is to get out. If you cannot find an ally to advocate and force change to happen inside of that relationship, you have to get out. You have to find a way to get into a new system that really respects you and sees you in a different way. There is, trust me, I've tried. Because of the autism, I'm a pattern recognizer and I really analyze stuff. This is why I do what I do, and psychology is my focus. I really love psychology. So I would just break it down, try to analyze it from all sorts of angles and run these scenarios in my head. And then I would try them. And literally there is nothing you can do to break a scapegoat position. They have weaponized their abuse to you so sophisticatedly that there is no strategy that you can come up with to give yourself power back. You have no power. So the only solution that you have is just to leave, to get out of the relationship. This is a big question. Rona Powers 205 asked, how long does it take for them to stop harassing you? She's being harassed on voicemail. Mine stalked me for over a year, kept visiting me on my Facebook, kept visiting my website, reading all my posts, and then, storing up all their, and then he was also listening to my podcast and just stalking me, just really it was awful. You can't, somebody says block them if you can't always block their access because they find new ways. They get a burner number, they'll get a new email. Your best freedom from this is to cease to care. Now, I'm not suggesting that you ignore danger. If this person is going to hurt you, if you're getting warnings, this person is escalating and getting ready to do something, break in, and threaten you. I'm not, please then seek legal advice, get help, report the harassing. But if it's just a nuisance, I even got invitations to horrible sites. This person would sign me up for just crappy profiles. I once got signed up for OnlyFans. And they were asking me to verify my profile, and I got really freaked out that this person posted photos of me in some way. Not that this person had any, compromising photos of me. He didn't, but I got nervous that he was posting something. So I got, I had to log in to see. I mean, it was awful. Just the stuff that they do to you too, just to torture you. But your best revenge and freedom is to cease to care. Just to really start to ignore it to the degree, I agree with Kate. Kate says find out what cyber stalking rules are. Find out what stalking rules are in your state or in your country. Definitely don't neglect that. You may want to start, create a report so that you have a record that this person is doing this to you. But I'm not terribly optimistic that there's a whole lot of activity that any legal place does that's terribly helpful. I'm not that optimistic about it. I do think it's worth creating a record, so there's a history, but your best defense is just to simply ignore it, to live your life the way you want to live it, fully and freely, and blow the rest off. That is the revenge that I think that really is sweet. The sweet revenge is just to go ahead and have a freedom of life like that. So it's like listening to your twin. I'm so sorry that you're going through this, Alexandria. That's awful. The laws seem to be made for a narcissistic psychopath. I agree. Research too, but I think unfortunately I don't know why there's this, we wear blinders as a culture, that we ignore the real risk of danger, that we ignore that this stuff actually happens. And to me, it's shocking to the degree that we just pretend that's not happening. So yeah, there's a lot of ignorance about it, and there's also a lot of downplaying. So when you say it's they're like, well, I don't think they mean it that bad, and I don't think this person understands what they're doing, and is it really? I think and then they meet them, and they're all about everybody who's a cluster B is all about image management, so they present really well, and they're the ones together because they're not being traumatized, they're the ones doing the trauma. So they're not upset and dysregulated, and then we look like we're the crazy ones because we're upset and talking too loud and talking too fast and not making sense because we're so dysregulated. So we end up looking bad. We end up looking like the ill one instead of the one who's doing it. I loved it. This is what Dr. Ramani said, and I just thought this was a great quote. She said, "It's the one of the disorders which the person with the disorder doesn't suffer, but everyone around them does." And that's true. This is a disorder in which that person who has this disorder, they're not suffering. They're not in a whole lot of pain. But everyone around this person suffers horribly because of them. Just really horribly. I do agree with you. It is criminal for what people do and they're allowed to do, but it's very difficult because the way that the criminal justice system works, there's not a lot of fairness out there. Yeah, he said he was hurting himself, not me. Long story, I tried to help him out of this 5 times. If somebody, Melissa, who really wants help is going to do it for themselves. Very, very much so. They're going to step up and they're going to take the steps to do it. Anytime someone leans into you and says that you have to help them, that's on you, they're not taking responsibility. That's not authentic change. That's a form of manipulation. I hate to be this cruel. And as a psychologist, even in the office, I'd had people come in and they would want me to make the change for them. Well, I'm not running their lives. I can only give observations and make recommendations, but it really comes down to the person's ability to implement any of it. And a lot of us don't want to do that hard work. We're not going to implement it. We want somebody else to, this is what I would say, because I tried to be kind. I would say, I really love the idea of a fairy godmother, but I'm not one. I don't have that magic wand. I cannot change things for you. You have to change this for yourself. And it's really up to you how much work you're going to do or not do. I mean, I can give you all the best advice, but if you can't put the work to work, then that's a choice you're making. Yeah, so that's where I sort of draw the line with people. Someone just today, I got an email from a narcissist who said, "I'm destroying my life. I'm about ready to, my partner is a woman. My partner is going to about ready to walk out with her 7-year-old. I'm losing everything. And my comment to this individual was, here's the steps I'd recommend that you take. But it's going to be, you have to do the hard work. And you have to also know that you may not save this relationship, but that you want to do it for you. You're not doing it for the relationship. You have to want to do it for you. And most of the people who are like this don't want to do it for themselves. They only wanted to do it just to get what they want from a relationship. That all of it is just another form of exploitation. It's not actually authentic desire for real change. So that's where we have to see that and stop being the saviors for these individuals. We have to stop rescuing them. Oh, I'm realizing why you guys have such bad internet on TikTok. I am so sorry. You have been on my cell service the entire time. I just saw it, a warning that you guys had unstable. I forgot to turn it back onto my Wi-Fi. You guys have been running off cell. I deeply apologize. Tammy, you've tried to warn me that it keeps freezing. I really apologize for that. Yeah, today was one of those days I ran out of time and I didn't get everything kind of lined up quite the way that I wanted. All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up today. I will be back next week at my normal time on Tuesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Next week, we're going to be talking about, I just saw it. Let me look at it. Let's see which one it's going to be about. Oh, how to leave a narcissist for good. It's how to leave a narcissist for good. Renee, I realize why it's glitching. It's on my fault, not your fault. I have a bad internet connection. I really apologize for that, but I'll be back on Tuesday talking about why we can't leave for good and how to leave better. So I hope you guys will join me next Tuesday. And if you're struggling with healing, check out Healing Strong. And if you really would like help breaking the trauma bond, check out Trauma Bond Recovery Group Coaching. Both starts, the Trauma Bond starts in February and the Healing starts in next week. Healing Strong starts next week. All right, you guys, I loved hanging out with you today on the holiday. I'm glad we kicked off the first day of the new year on this foot. It's been really lovely being with you today. Bye-bye.